Ever since humans discovered that you can do different things than calling and texting with a smartphone, phones have gotten bigger and bigger. However, the Huawei Ascend Mate 7, which we're looking at in today's video, is actually smaller than its predecessor. So does shrinking it down to only 6 inches actually make it more useful, or is it still considered way too large? After the original Ascend Mate, which I bought on pretty much day one and enjoyed until last week or so, other manufacturers also started making phablets, like even the big phone haters at Apple who were laughing at Samsung Notes, they now have their own phablets, so good for you guys. But yeah, this actually makes the Ascend Mate 7 one of the smaller phones at still 6 inches of screen size. So I actually compared it to the OnePlus One, which is a 5.5 inch device. This one is actually exactly the same size, but as you can see, it's very thin. So it actually feels a lot smaller than it also feels lighter and better balanced. For a Huawei phone, this one actually feels like really high end. So you have full Gorilla Glass on the front, no physical buttons here, and of course a full metal unibody. The only plastic bits on this phone are on the top and on the bottom for the antennas to actually have any reception. In my opinion, all of this high-end engineering kind of makes the Ascend Mate 7 the best Huawei phone to date, even though Huawei itself only really makes adverts for the P7, so the smaller phone. This is really just their flagship model. The phone itself comes in a good but bit simple looking black box with just the shiny 7 and Ascend Mate on there. There's no product pictures, no specs, nothing on here, so it's just a simple box. However, when you open it, you immediately are met with the Ascend Mate 7 itself here. And then let's just take this one out because we don't want it to fall right, and of course there's going to be a lot of B-roll in this video. So below that we have our accessory box. So this has a 2 amp charger because the battery in there is 41 milliamp hour, which is one of the biggest batteries, and it easily lasts you 2 days. So you need a really big charger so it's actually 4 times more powerful than most chargers. And then we also have alright sounding earphones. That's pretty much all that there is in here. And then in this little compartment we have the manual, as well as this little metal pin, which I'll show you guys later. As I already mentioned, the phone has a full metal unibody and a glass front, yet it only weighs around 185 grams, which considering the 6 inch size of it is actually pretty alright. I had my previous Ascend Mate for well over a year actually, and it never scratched, so I'm guessing the Gorilla Glass is good enough. While there are no front-facing stereo speakers, that did enable Huawei to give this beauty a screen-to-body ratio of 83%, which is the same as the previous models, but it's now in a smaller phone, so theoretically you actually have a relative ratio which is bigger. Now on the front we have a 5 million pixel camera, but it can only record in 720p. The rear sensor has a 30 megapixel camera and full HD recording. Also it has a little flash. There's no 4K recording here, even though this very same Sony 4th gen optical image stabilization sensor is used in other phones. So why doesn't this one have 4K? I have no idea. The USB connector is on the bottom, but it's slightly offset to the left, which if you have OCD is going to be really annoying for you. Now the logo has been moved to the bottom, and it used to be in the top, so the first few days I had it I was always holding it upside down because yeah. And what they also did is put the power button below the volume rockers, which is also the opposite of the previous model. So for me it was a bit of adjusting to it. Now the 3.5mm jack is on the top, which is the logical place. It's not logical to put it in the bottom, but some manufacturers keep doing that. I have no idea why. But yeah, so the 3.5mm is in the top, and then on the side we have these little 2 holes there, and if you push them with the little pin that I showed earlier, and I'll show it again thanks to the magic of editing, if you just poke the little hole with the stick, then the tray opens up and you can put a SIM card and an SD card in there. So it's micro SIM, by the way. So yeah, it feels really good in your hand. The button placement is pretty much spot on, so you can easily, when you hold it the right side up of course, you can very easily just press the power button. That works very well. The volume rockers, they're a tiny bit high, but then if you put the power button somewhere perfect, you know, the other buttons are going to be either too low or too high, so that's all normal. Now, another amazing thing of placement is this fingerprint sensor in the back. So when you hold the phone like you normally would, your index finger is actually right on the sensor, which is great because it means you can just unlock it by holding it. You don't have to press the button if that was too hard for you. Note that if you do enable the fingerprint scanner, you will have to enter a PIN code when not using it, so it's not like you can just unlock it the normal way as well. This fingerprint sensor is connected right up to the SoC, so the system on a chip. It has a special area in it, as I'll show on this picture right here, marketing stuff, right? So theoretically, Huawei says you can't hack it, but I mean Justin Bieber also said never say never and all that sort of stuff, so it's probably safer than just storing it to flash memory, but it's not going to be perfect. Now this SoC, as I showed in the picture, it also has a lot of other really cool features, like of course the CPU in there, the 9 CPUs in there, the Mali graphics, everything in there is really good, and instead of just running you through a lot of stuff, all you really need to know is that it's incredibly fast, graphics are great, the screen is great, and battery life is just... If you have an iPhone right now, this is 4 iPhone charges worth of, yeah, epicness. However, I do have a little complaint about the screen, namely the auto brightness isn't quite as smooth as I would like. I don't know if it's in the top, probably in somewhere else, but auto brightness isn't as smooth as I've seen with other phones. So for testing, to show you guys how fast it really is, here's an Antutu run. I'll just put the print screen in right here. But basically it scored well over 43,300 points, which is right up there with the fastest of the fast. I mean, Galaxy S5 is slower. The only one, according to Antutu, that's faster was the HTC M8T. So it's really, really fast, this high silicon chip. Now, one of the things I think is really, really important with a smartphone is the camera in there, because as Jarvis that said it, like the best camera is the one you have on you, and a smartphone is something you always have on you, so it has to have a great camera. Now, in the Ascend Mate 7 you have stuff like HDR, which you really shouldn't ever use, guys. Seriously, don't use HDR. And it also has geotagging, but it also has a rather fun feature for us ugly people. So there's a beautifier which you can set, and then if you're really ugly and you want to take selfies, you can still do that and look alright, I guess. Another fun feature with this camera is that it has a special function for long exposures, or if you're in a dark environment mostly, so then it will actually take multiple pictures and stabilize the thing while you're doing so. So it's like a variation on HDR and burst mode. So talking about burst mode, you can take 20-second bursts at full 13 megapixels. So that adds up to 4400 by 3300, something like that. So it's a 13 megapixel camera, right? Now there's also another option, which is focused after shooting. So what that pretty much means is that you can, again, when you enable it, it just takes a bunch of pictures, and then afterwards it puts them in one picture, and then the user can actually decide where the focus is. Which is, I don't really see the point in that feature, but whatever, because it actually takes some time to take those pictures, whereas the autofocus is probably faster. Now, despite all these fun features with this phone, actual image quality isn't really amazing. It all looks a bit like flat profile, so you'll have to do some color correction afterwards. And even the in-focus bits aren't as sharp as I'm used to from cameras, but then again, it's just a very thin phone, so you can't expect massive sensors and everything in there. So let's now talk a bit about the user interface. So this is Huawei's Emotion 3.0 user interface. So it's just a variation on Android 4.4.2 at this moment on this model. So nothing is really like the original, and for some people that will be very annoying. For other people it will be great because there's a lot of customization. There's a separate even theme store, so you don't have to put different launchers on. You can just install a bunch of different themes. Very, very helpful. Now, something annoying with this user interface is that it does come with some bloatware from the factory, but luckily enough you can easily remove those without having to root it or anything. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the user interface, other than one little tiny issue I have with it, which is actually a very big issue, namely the notification screen has merged with the shortcut screen. So it's now a single screen with 2 taps, and I found myself in the wrong one more often than not, really. Alright guys, conclusion time on the Ascend Mate 7, and the 7 isn't the amount of inches because that would be 6, it isn't the generation which would be 3, it's just the number of key improvements, I guess. So yeah, that's a stupid name, but other than that there's nothing really wrong with it, and especially if you come from other phones, not the previous one, you'll find this one, it will work for you right away, it will be very easy to use. The battery life is amazing, and so with all of that stuff we're going to put a gold award right there, and yeah, it just gets simple gold award. There's nothing wrong with it other than the price point is now 500 euros instead of the 470 I think it was before this. So it's got a bit more expensive, but then you do get metal instead of plastic, and better features, a newer Android version, better screen, better battery life. It's way faster as well, and yeah, so it's just perfect other than the camera, which is good. It's actually very good, but it's not perfect. So if you like this video guys, you can just press the like button. You can also press the dislike button if you just didn't like this video. You can comment on what you think about the video, what you think about phablets, what you think about anything really. I read every comment, and if it's not a completely stupid question, I will actually even reply to it. Thank you all very, very much for watching.